eating the Gomu Gomu no Mi has probably been the most pivotal and crucial moment in Luffy's path and whole story in general. But did you ever wonder what would happen if Luffy had not eaten the Gomu no Mi? And even more than that, what if Ace was the one who ate the Gomu no Mi instead? Would Ace survive longer? Would Luffy die sooner? How different would the story be? Well, that's exactly what we'll be analyzing in today's video. First things first, we need to understand that, as a matter of fact, we still do not know what Shanks' true intentions were with the Gomu no Mi. What did he want to do with it? Did he secretly intend for Luffy to eat it? Did he want to keep it for someone in his crew? Or even himself, maybe? Maybe he wanted to sell it? Well, the most likely scenario, and a theory I also personally believe in, is that Shanks intended for Ace to eat the devil fruit. Shanks probably knew the potential of this devil fruit, and thus intended for Ace to have it. A very popular theory that ties in with this is that all former members of the Roger Pirates have a certain goal to play after their captain's death. After all, why wouldn't Shanks go after the One Piece if he knew where it was, right? Or if he could very easily ask one of his former crewmates like Rayleigh, because his role is something else. This theory states that his task was to find the next successor for Roger's dream. He was carrying the Straw Hat, and his goal was to pass it along to the one he would entrust with becoming the next Pirate King. Rayleigh's task, for example, would be to train the next Pirate King. Crocus's task was to welcome this next rookie and give them small guiding points as an introduction to their journey. After all, don't forget that he was the one who gave the Straw Hats their first log pose and explained to them how things work in the Grand Line. I mean, this task was not just to rage bait them, right? Without the first instruction, well, the crew might have had to rely on Zoro to navigate the ship, and we all know how that would have turned out. But back to Shanks now. If Shanks' task was indeed to find the next Pirate King and give him the Straw Hat, it's also possible that he actually intended to give the successor the Gomu no Mi as well. But did he intend for Luffy to eat it? Probably not, as his go-to option was probably Ace. So what if Shanks actually achieved this goal, and thus Ace ate the Gomu no Mi? Okay, so here's how this plays out. Shanks finds and meets Ace, where he convinces him to eat the devil fruit. However, once Shanks tries to give Ace the Straw Hat as well, Ace refuses, as he knows this hat is associated with Roger, and we all know that Ace despised him. With that being said, Ace already ate the fruit, but at the same time has not received the Straw Hat. So what now? Well, the Straw Hat once again goes to Luffy in this alternate timeline as well, with the only exception that Luffy now does not have the Gomu no Mi. Now, a small question arises here. What would Ace's nickname be now? After all, he can no longer be called Fire Fist Ace, since he no longer has in his possession the Mira Mira no Mi. So, which one should we choose here? Yeah, let's not give him any of those names. If you have a better suggestion, go ahead and let us know in the comments down below. But for now, let's just say that Ace is no longer called Fire Fist. Okay, so let's start with Ace's timeline now. Ace can now extend his limbs, bounce off surfaces, and jump higher. He can even create this rubber subscribe button for you to click. Go ahead and smash it for the best One Piece content on YouTube. But anyway, back to our story. You see, in the original timeline, Ace fought and defeated Hanafuda, the King of Lizards, and a member of the Beast Pirates. That, by the way, is also the father of Ulti and Page 1. For those who don't know, this guy was collecting special Zoan devil fruits, probably for Kaido's crew, and even though not confirmed why, he did clash with Ace. Well, to understand what would happen in this timeline, we need to see how strong Ace was in the original timeline and how strong he is now. First of all, it's worth noting that Ace was a natural prodigy. He had access to all three forms of Haki from very early on, as let's not forget, he was seen using Conqueror's Haki at just the age of 10. He was also very talented and a creative fighter. With these things in mind, it's fair to assume that Ace would actually be much more powerful than Luffy while using the Gomu Gomu no Mi. But would Ace be strong enough to defeat Hanafuda? Definitely. Just like it happened in the original story, Hanafuda was one of the 7 warlords, and yet he lost to Ace all the same. Ace uses his new rubber abilities, and without much trouble, he defeats Hanafuda. And just like that, similar to the original story, Ace slowly makes a name for himself by defeating multiple pirates that stood in his way, enough to be noticed by even the world government, who offered him the position of a warlord. And this is where Ace starts getting cocky and decides to fight Whitebeard. And yeah, we all know what happened here. The only difference here is that the way Whitebeard defeats Ace is even more comical. Being made out of rubber, well, Whitebeard kind of ties Ace into a knot and makes fun of him. He then lets his crewmates untie him, only for Ace to be made a fool of again when trying to attack Whitebeard all the same. We all know the rest. Ace's repeated attempts to defeat Whitebeard causes Whitebeard to take an interest in him, and thus convince him to join his crew. Here, a serious question arises. If you remember, for this devil fruit to awaken, its user needs to be absolutely free. This devil fruit is quite literally the epitome of freedom. So even if a small factor does not meet those conditions, then the potential awakening of this devil fruit might not happen. And with Ace now kinda being under someone, aka Whitebeard, would Ace be really considered free? Well, we'll find out when the time comes. But for now, the essence is that Ace joined the Whitebeard pirates all the same, just like it happened in the original timeline. And when it comes to the next time we saw Ace in the original timeline, it's when Ace and Luffy meet in Alabasta, where Ace helps Luffy fight off Smoker. And if Ace did not intervene back then, we all know Smoker would absolutely destroy Luffy at this point in time. So with that in mind, we still did not talk about Luffy at all. How different would his side of the story be? After all, he didn't eat the Gomu no Mi, right? Would Luffy be left with no devil fruit? Well, we could split the video in two different situations here, because quite honestly, it's a bit impossible to know for sure whether Luffy would eat a devil fruit or not. In the first timeline, Luffy would eat no devil fruits, while in the other, Luffy does eat one. But then, which one would he eat? Well, I think for the purposes of this video, let's go ahead and stick to scenario number 1, in which Luffy doesn't eat any devil fruits at all. After all, Luffy was not like a businessman or something. Where would he find the money to buy a devil fruit? And devil fruits are rare. It's not like you can walk by and find one just sitting there. You either have to steal it or buy it. And Luffy in this scenario does none of these options. So, how strong is Luffy now without devil fruits? Well, it is true that in the world of One Piece, Haki might actually be more important than devil fruits. Even Kaido believed that that was the case. And truth be told, a lot of legends out there do not even have a devil fruit to begin with. Garp, Roger, Shanks, Mihawk, all just to name a few, rely solely on their Haki to fight. With that being said, would Luffy survive without a devil fruit? Well, to answer this, we should probably dive into Luffy's early fighting style. Even though Luffy is now one of the best Haki users in the series, let me tell you, this wasn't always the case. If you recall, Luffy did not show any signs of Haki until Marineford, which was roughly 450 episodes into the story. Before that, Luffy relied solely on his devil fruit, guts, and determination, and unexpectedly so, his creativity in using his devil fruit. But now, he has no devil fruit! So for starters, when Kobe finds Luffy stranded inside a barrel, Luffy now needs to fight the Alvida pirates, and he needs to do so without his devil fruit nor Haki. Can he defeat them? Well, probably not, but let's go a bit easy on Luffy and say that he could somehow use his force of will and somehow defeat them. What next? Well, Luffy tries to break Zoro free, right? Once again, let's give Luffy the benefit of the doubt and assume that he somehow manages to make it out alive. You see, he frees Zoro, and then Zoro kinda does the rest. After all, Zoro is probably stronger than Luffy in this version of the story. At least for now, that is. Even though the Marines would fill Luffy with bullets, once again, let's be lenient with Luffy and assume he somehow survives. Well, the next stop is Baratie, and here, well, we can no longer be giving Luffy plot armor. He fights against Don Krieg and ends up killed. Even if that didn't happen, some of his next opponents would be Arlong, Buggy, Crocodile, Bellamy, and if those weren't enough to kill Luffy, well, let's face it, Luffy would die 10 times over by now. He would then be faced against Enel, and well, the only reason Luffy survived against Enel was because of his rubber. That was basically the natural enemy of Enel's Goro Goro no Mi. Sanji did survive one attack from Enel, but well, even if we assume Luffy could do that, and even better, he could maybe withstand one, maybe two, let's say 3 tops, after that, Luffy's dead. He cannot even punch Enel that's made of electricity here, since in the original story, he had to use that huge ball of gold to attack Enel. Since he can't do that here, Luffy is 100% dead here. But as we explained, Luffy would never actually make it this far. Luffy dies, and thus Ace has to continue his journey on his own. How would the people next to him take it? Well, we kinda already made a video about this topic, where we explained everyone's reaction if Luffy actually died in One Piece. You can go ahead and watch that one as well, once you finish watching this one. But in this timeline, I'm gonna focus more on 4 characters: Ace, Sabo, Dragon, and Garp. For Sabo, someone could argue that since Luffy was not such a big name here, his death never makes headlines, and thus Sabo never finds out. But here, I would say the following. You're probably forgetting that Sabo is right next to Dragon, meaning that once Dragon reacts to Luffy's death, Sabo finds out as well. This triggers his memory to return, and thus he finds out about not only Luffy, but about Ace as well. That now in this timeline is very much alive. Now when it comes to Dragon, well, even though we do not know a lot of things about him, what we can indeed say is that he does not really seem like the calm type type that would just stand there and do nothing. And what I mean by that is that, well, the one who actually killed Luffy probably won the lottery, because Dragon is definitely coming after him. And we all know how that's gonna turn out. Realistically speaking, if we're not giving Luffy any plot armor, he probably dies all the way back in Shell's Town when trying to free Zoro. For Garp, well, he's sad, but at the end of the day, he kind of blames himself for not training Luffy better, so that he's both stronger, but also that his ideals would be better, and thus join the Marines. And finally, Ace. Well, he kind of goes through something similar to what Luffy went through in the original timeline. He cries, is depressed, but eventually returns stronger than ever. Back to the plot progression now. How different would the life of the Straw Hats be? Well, Zoro is captive of the Marines and executed shortly after. On Usopp's side, when Kuro arrives in Syrup Island, he kills Usopp and all of the island residents, including Kaya, to go on and inherit her treasure. On Sanji's side, Don Krieg attacks Baratie and kills some of the people in it. Sanji, however, survives for a little bit longer until Mihawk arrives. When Mihawk arrives, he slices Don Krieg in half and the rest of Baratie is free. However, even though Sanji's not dead, we all know that sooner or later, his family's gonna come after him for the political marriage between him and Pudding. And when that happens, well, Sanji's nowhere near as strong as he was in the original story, since he never set sail with the Straw Hats. Plus, Luffy and the Straw Hats are not present here to cause havoc in the island, meaning Sanji is shot dead by Pudding during their wedding. For Nami, well, she's still Arlong's slave and continues to be abused as there's no one there to help her. Laboon does not meet the Straw Hats and he keeps rampaging on the seas. Drum Island is taken by Wapol and everyone becomes his slaves, including Chopper. In Alabasta, things should be analyzed a bit. You see, even though Luffy is no longer present in Alabasta, we assume that Ace still passes through here, and because of that, he clashes with Smoker. Here, the difference, however, is that Ace is no longer a Logia user, and thus the way he needs to fight Smoker is different. However, given Ace's hockey mastery, we assume he can deal with Smoker in a similar way he did in the original timeline. But what happens with the actual plot of Alabasta now? Well, if you recall, Ace was just passing by Alabasta, and thus does not stop here to fight against Crocodile, meaning that the country remains under Crocodile's captivity all the same. Vivi is killed by Crocodile, and Robin never leaves the country. In Skypiea, Enel continues to rule everyone, and he later develops into a much stronger character that plays a major role in the plot of One Piece. The guy's potential was enormous. Godly devil fruit, insane hockey skills, as if you recall, his mantra was nothing more than observation hockey, and he had insane skills on top of that. Like, he could sense what everyone was doing in the entire country. I dare say that if he kept developing his hockey, as he kept on fighting strong opponents, he would definitely become a warlord. Heck, he could even challenge Yamgos depending on his path. But anyway, back to the Straw Hats. In Water 7, Frankie just keeps on being a nudist pervert and never leaves the country. His fate is probably the best out of all the Straw Hats. Worst case scenario for him is that he gets jailed for sexual harassment. For Robin now, when the world government actually finds her, they take her and execute her. And there's no one there to help her. In Thriller Bark, Gecko Moria is left free to continue taking shadows of people. However, Oars is not awakened because Moria did not find a strong enough soul for him yet. And for anyone ready to say that Ace might have saved some of these characters, or he may have passed from some common points as Luffy, well, not so likely. Remember, Ace had his own goals and path to take, which brings us to the exciting part of the video. It's now time to talk about Ace versus Blackbeard. The main difference that occurs in this timeline is exactly during this fight. Similar to the original story, Blackbeard does what he does, kills Thatch and steals the Yami Yami no Mi. This leads Ace to go after him, and thus the confrontation of Ace against Blackbeard. But how would things play out now that Ace holds the Gomu Gomu no Mi? Well, similar to the original story, Blackbeard overpowers Ace. But well, here, things could pan out a bit differently on a few points. You see, Ace's new rubber body makes things a bit different. Ace is now faster and more agile. But is that enough to defeat Blackbeard? Probably not. Remember, not only is Devil Fruit one of the strongest in the world of One Piece, but Blackbeard also seems to have another kind of secret ability that we don't know about yet, that he also displays when he's going off screen. I mean, whenever he's losing, the fight goes off screen, and then suddenly, Blackbeard wins. Also, how did he give Shanks the scar and all of that before even eating any devil fruits? Yeah, Blackbeard definitely is hiding something. So because of this, we assume that Blackbeard defeats Ace. But for the sake of the video, instead of being captured, Ace awakens his devil fruit instead. Well, to be honest, we already made a video about what would happen if Ace had awakened his devil fruit against Blackbeard a while back. But here, things are a bit different, as Ace has now eaten the Gomu no Mi instead. Well, the truth is that a few conditions needed to be met in order for this to happen. Ace needs to be truly free, and he also needs to put close to death in order to be reawakened. Assuming these conditions are met, Ace awakens his devil fruit, and Ace versus Blackbeard now moves into round 2. Now things are much more even between the two, so Blackbeard does not take any chances and just flees, meaning that Marineford in this timeline never happens, and as a result, Whitebeard does not die either. Blackbeard does not consume Whitebeard's devil fruit, and thus needs to go after another devil fruit. Plus, if you recall, Blackbeard used the chaos Luffy caused at Impel Down in order to recruit new crewmates. Without this happening, well, this means two things. Buggy never breaks free from Impel Down, and Blackbeard is nowhere near as strong or important in this timeline when compared to the canon story. But before we continue, let's briefly get back to what Luffy's absence would cause. Hody Jones is left roaming free in Fishman Island, and eventually takes control over it. This leads in further distancing between humans and fishmen, as the extremism coming from Hody Jones influences people's minds tremendously. Not only that, but Shirahoshi is abused and used in ways to benefit Hody Jones, as let's not forget, Shirahoshi is an ancient weapon. In Dressrosa, Rebecca is never freed from the Colosseum battles. She eventually dies in battle. Viola is kept being abused by Doflamingo, and there's no one to help her. Law's plan to take down Doflamingo fails, and as a result, Law is taken captive and tortured until he performs the Ope no Mi surgery on Dofi's wish. Law refuses to perform the surgery no matter what, and so Law dies many years later after extreme suffering without ever granting Dofi's wish. Doflamingo keeps supplying Kaido with his weapons, and in Punk Hazard, Caesar keeps creating the smiles that are sent to Wano. The scabbards in Momonosuke are eventually found and killed, and the people of Zou are killed by Jack. However, the second interesting plotline here is that Ace does make it back to Wano, and he does so alongside his crew of elite Whitebeard pirates. Ace reunites with Yamato and decides he needs to free Wano. Plus, in this timeline, Big Mom is not present here, as she had no reason to come to Wano now. After all, Luffy did not mess with her plans at all. Ace and his squad fight off Kaido, and even though this is no easy win, we assume that Ace, after everything he's been through, as well as with the help of his Devil Fruit awakening, manages to defeat Kaido. At this point, Blackbeard, that was after a strong Devil Fruit, sneaks up when Kaido's already defeated and steals his Devil Fruit. He also starts gathering a strong crew, and just like that, Blackbeard is back in business and is considered a candidate for becoming the Pirate King. Now, with Kaido defeated, is Ace the new Yonko? Well, Whitebeard's already one, right? So one crew having two Yonkos at the same time? Not too sure if that's possible, but well, this is exactly what we're gonna say happens here. At this point, a new warlord seems to be gathering a lot of attention, Enel. When Ace and Enel finally cross paths, well, Enel has met his natural enemy once again. Ace, having his body being rubbery, is immune to Enel's attack, and thus Ace defeats him without much trouble. Now, a big question that arises here is who will be the next Pirate King? Neither Whitebeard nor Ace are interested in the title. Shanks is probably something similar, which leaves only Big Mom and Blackbeard strong enough to go after it. But with Shanks, Whitebeard, and Ace all against both Big Mom and Blackbeard becoming the Pirate King, what kind of a result does that leave us with? This whole generation passes by and no one manages to become the Pirate King. A bit disappointing, sure, but don't forget, since Roger's death around 25 years ago, no one has reached Reftel. And with the current circumstances, it's probably gonna be a few more decades until someone strong enough and worthy enough appears to actually claim Roger's treasure and title. Click on this video next, where I am explaining the chances each One Piece character will achieve their goals. Go on, check it out!